Greetings, this is Dasher from AOEs and Etiquette bringing you today's guide. Today's topic is tanking fundamentals. Let's begin. Now, this goes without saying, but I'll make mention of it anyway. Please read your tooltips whenever you learn a new ability. Additionally, a newly acquired trait can change the way an old ability works. So, read your trait descriptions as well, then refer back to any affected abilities and read their tooltip. As a tank, in order to be as durable and tanky as possible for all the enemies that will be wailing on you, it's important to be geared appropriately. Here are a few things to keep in mind. 1. Always make sure that you are equipping the highest item level gear you can equip for your level. Utilize the recommended gear button to automatically equip the best item level gear you currently have. Note that while the recommended gear feature works well enough, it does not always select the absolute best in slot gear for you. Keep that in mind in endgame as you prepare for raids and such. 2. If you are buying gear from the market board, opt for high quality versions of gear if you can afford it. They provide higher stat boosts. 3. In order of what to give first. Prioritize your weapon first, then chest and leg pieces as they give the highest stat boosts. After that, focus on the rest of your left side, then accessories on the right. Now, this order of gearing oneself isn't a hard set in stone rule, but for early game this order makes sense. 4. Right under the item level on your equipment window, you can see which classes and jobs can equip the gear you are selecting. Make sure that you are purchasing gear that you can equip. In higher levels, you will see suffix phrases for gear names. Tank gear always has the suffix phrase of fending to make them easier to recognize. Marking has its uses in all levels of content. In the context of early game dungeon runs, it's a useful tool that can speed up a dungeon's progress by having your DPS focus their attacks on one enemy at a time. Best practice is to number a pack of enemies from 1 to 3 or 4, depending on the pack size, and have the DPS attack them in numerical order. It can be found in your main menu under Party and can be assigned to hotbars for easy access. At level 15, you will unlock your primary pulling tool. Your pulling tool is used to pull a mob and subsequently its pack from a safe distance so as not to aggro any extra enemies that might be patrolling nearby. As a tank, positioning is key to keeping your party safe from enemy cleaves and ensuring that they can maximize their DPS output. A general rule is to position the enemies in such a manner that they are facing you with their backs turned to your party. While doing this, move as little as possible. In Final Fantasy XIV, whether you count as being hit or not by an AOE is determined by where you are standing after the AOE marker and the enemy's cast bar disappears. If you are out of the marker when it disappears, the AOE will not hit you. If you are in the marker when it disappears, it will hit you. The actual animation of the attack is irrelevant. That being said, as a tank, the best practice is to move out of an AOE marker, then move back to where you were previously standing once the marker disappears. This ensures that you are moving the enemy pack as little as possible. Aggro Management is your main job as a tank. Aggro, also known as hate or enmity, is the metric the game uses to determine who an enemy attacks. Certain actions raise an enemy's enmity towards party members, such as a healer who constantly overheals or a DPS that is dealing a considerable amount of damage to an enemy. To determine where each party member ranks on a given target's enmity scale, refer to these bars underneath the job icons and the numbers to their left. The lower the number, the higher the enmity that party member has, with the highest enmity rating indicated by the letter A. As a tank, in most situations, you want to have the highest enmity on all enemies your party is fighting. The most efficient way to do that is to 1. Activate your tank stance, unlocked by level 10. This grants a significant bonus to your enemy generation. 2. In a pack of enemies, repeatedly use your AOE attack, unlocked to either level 6 or 10 depending on which class you are. When there is one enemy left, use your main combo. In later levels, you will get access to more AOE attacks and AOE combos, which you can employ as well. If you lose aggro on an enemy mob, use the provoke roll action to regain aggro on it. In Trials and higher end raid content, you will have a co-tank with which you will be swapping main tank duties with. To that end, utilize the shirk roll action to transfer 25% of your aggro to your co-tank in situations where they need to take point. Learning to manage your defensive cooldowns is an integral part to tanking. Every tank learns their main defensive cooldown at level 38, but they learn their earliest defensive cooldown, Rampart, at level 8. Rampart is a roll action, which is an ability that all classes in that role learn. In other words, all tanks learn Rampart, as well as every ability in your role list. A few general guidelines. 1. Do not stack cooldowns. 2. In most cases, it is typically a better use of your cooldown to use in a large pool than to use it on a boss within the dungeon. 3. In trials where bosses use tank busters, save a cooldown such as Rampart or your tank-specific level 38 cooldown to use during the tank buster cast. 4. In trials and raids, discuss cooldown usage order with your party members so as not to overlap cooldowns that lower the boss's damage. Those do not stack and instead override each other, wasting the cooldown's uptime. Tanks have access to at least one stun and one interrupt ability by way of their roll actions. Some enemies with potentially troublesome abilities typically can be stunned to forestall the execution of said troublesome ability. Additionally, there are some enemies that have special attacks that can only be interrupted. Interruptible casts look like this as they cast. With regard to stuns, be aware that stuns have a diminishing return effect on enemies. If you stun an enemy the first time, the enemy is stunned for 6 seconds. If you stun that same enemy a second time, the enemy is stunned for 3 seconds. A third time, and the enemy will be stunned for 1. After that, the enemy is immune to any subsequent stuns for 60 seconds. Then, the diminishing effect resets. Focus targeting an enemy or boss is a great way to hone in on a target's buffs, debuffs, HP, and ability casts. For some, this is an excellent tool to filtering out otherwise extraneous information and only showing the essentials. Line of sight is a targeting characteristic that checks to see if you are in the line of sight of an enemy and vice versa. If you have an enemy targeted and they are not in your line of sight, you will not be able to attack them. Inversely, if you are not in an enemy's line of sight, they will not be able to attack you and will reposition themselves until you are in their line of sight. This also applies to instances such as casting a healing spell on a party member, so be aware of your positioning in relation to your party members at all times. This is especially useful if you have an enemy in a pack that only casts spells. Mobs of this type will meet the absolute minimum distance requirement to attack you, so you will be in a position where there is a lone enemy mob outside of melee range casting spells at you, while the rest of the pack is within striking distance of you and your party. You can either move yourself and the enemy pack to where that caster mob is, or you can force it into melee range by hiding behind a nearby wall, thus breaking its line of sight and forcing it to move close to you in order to re-establish their line of sight. As a tank, you can make that judgment call based on your positioning in relation to patrol mobs and or what option is easiest for your melee DPS party members to adjust to. Line of sighting is more of a mid to high level concept that has legitimate applications in content such as PvP and deep dungeons, but it is useful to learn as a beginner and has some early game applications. Some enemies in early game are very easily line of sighted, such as most succubi enemy types. Just running through them in the middle of their cast breaks line of sight, cancelling their cast and thereby saving yourself from extra damage. In later dungeons, the preferred method to pull groups is to pull as large of a pack as possible, in other words, from wall to wall. In most cases, best practice is to pull 2 packs at a time. Use your AOE abilities to maintain top aggro on all the mobs until they are dead, then repeat. Don't forget to utilize your defensive cooldowns appropriately during these large pulls. In dungeon content, always ask your healer if they are alright with you making large pulls. With the influx of new players, some healers might not be comfortable in their ability to keep you alive during large pulls. In addition, examine your healer and check their gear to be sure that they are adequately geared. If the healer's item level is on the lower side, err on the side of caution with your pulls. Once you are higher in level, you will find yourself running a lot of older dungeons for one reason or another. To facilitate your dungeon runs, it's best to be familiar with the dungeon layouts. By knowing, for example, the best positions to make efficient pulls, the best spots to pop your sprint ability, where possible switches and triggers are, when best to use your interrupts and stuns, and etc., you will find your dungeon runs getting faster, smoother, and cleaner, providing a great dungeon experience for you and your party. In some dungeons, higher level raids and content, you can utilize Waymarks that help with party and alliance positioning to correctly resolve certain boss mechanics. Keep in mind that Waymarks can only be placed before battle, so be sure you have your game plan ready beforehand. You can save Waymark layouts for easy deployment if you are, say, learning a raid and need to place Waymarks each time you re-enter the duty. In later trial and raid content, it is standard fare to use a countdown timer before pulling a boss. The timer is critical for some jobs to prepare their combat rotation. 15 seconds is the norm for most groups. In most content, tanks are never required to use their limit breaks. It's almost always a better use of your party's limit break gauge to spend on a DPS limit break or a healer limit break, depending on the situation. Tank limit breaks do have niche uses and some higher end content. A few raid bosses require a tank's limit break 3 to survive a mechanic, but those are few and far between. In 99% of cases, defer the limit break usage to your DPSs or healers. By level 50, you will have access to your Invulnerability ability. This is your oh shit button that you can smash whenever you are in danger of dying and need to hold out until your healer can save you. Your Invulnerability ability can have other applications as well, such as ignoring a tank swap mechanic in a raid fight. Typically, you want to use this ability as a last resort. In closing, here is a list of a few enemy types with tricky mechanics to look out for. The Chimera. These mob types have 2 attacks to watch out for, the Dragon's Voice and the Ram's Voice. Dragon is a large AOE with a small safe spot in the middle. Ram is a circular AOE around the Chimera. So when you see Dragon, stack on the Chimera, and when you see Ram, run away from the Chimera. Another way to think of it is Dragon in, Ram out. Bombs. These mobs use detonate after they have lost a percentage of health. Either stun the bomb, or run away from the bomb before the cast goes off. Bees or wasps. Be vigilant of their final sting ability. In most cases, it deals enough damage to instantly kill its target outright. Immediately stun the mob when you see the final sting cast. Aryamans. Aryamans are famous for their gaze attacks. If you see a purple eye icon over the mob, just turn around and do not face the mob until the cast goes off. Cyclops. This mob type has a lot of tricky attacks, but the ones to watch out for the most are X-Ton Swipe, and X-ton swing. Swipe and swing are the keywords here. Swipe is a conal AOE from the front of the mob, and swing is a circular AOE around the mob. If you see swipe, run through the mob to its backside, then return to your original spot once the cast bar disappears. If you see swing, run away from the mob, wait for the cast bar to disappear, then return to your original position. Alternatively, both attacks can be stunned, but be wary of the diminishing return effect of stunning. Morables. Stun or avoid their bad breath attack as soon as possible, or else you're in for a bad time. Thanks so much for watching this guide. Eorzean Etiquette is a brand new YouTube channel targeted at newer players, aka Sprouts, of Final Fantasy XIV looking to learn how to play the game. If you liked the video and want to support the Eorzean Etiquette in our creation of more videos, please like the video, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and share the video with your friends and family if they are also Final Fantasy XIV players. If you have any questions or suggestions for future content, please leave a comment down below. Thanks once again, and I'll catch you later.